Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me for Conversations with Alan. I'm Alan Locher, the child of two Holocaust survivors. I created this series to foster honest conversations about the rise of anti Semitism and hate with the hope of sparking discussions that encourage us all to reflect on our role in shaping history. My goal is to inspire collective action to eradicate hate in all its forms. These conversations are more crucial than ever as anti Semitism continues to rise around the world. Tonight, I am honored to welcome Holocaust survivor Nate Leipciger. At just 11 years old, Nate was forced into ghettos before being sent to Auschwitz during the Nazi occupation of Poland. He survived unimaginable conditions alongside his father, including a death march before being liberated in 1945. His sister and mother were murdered. In his memoir, The Weight of Freedom, which I am currently reading, it is a powerful read of Nate's story in his own words. Through the book and his work as an educator, Nate has devoted his life to ensuring that these stories are never forgotten, challenging each of us to consider a question that feels especially urgent today. Will you be a bystander or an upstander? This is a conversation about memory, responsibility, and the power of bearing witness. Please help me welcome Nathan Leipciger to Conversations with Alan. Hello there.
Hello, hello, hello.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's start. How are you doing, and what continues to give you the strength to share your story, and especially to share your story with the younger generations?
Well, I do it out of responsibility. It's a certain, I have a responsibility to those who did not make it. I have responsibility to those who survived and who could not speak about it. I have a responsibility to our youth today who are suffering because of the anti-Semitism and the xenophobia that is invading our countries and the world. I have that weighs very heavily on my shoulders. And I just came back from a March of the Living in Poland, where we went through the former Nazi concentration camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau, where I was for 14 weeks. And each week I was threatened with destruction by gassing. I cannot forget this, and I have to bring it to the world, because I know that what's happening today in the world and people are disregarding it.
Well,
And
thank you for
really,
doing so. Nate, you have shared that you began writing The Weight of Freedom at the age of 84, in part because of the realization that time is not guaranteed. Looking back from 98 years old, what was going through your mind at that point in your life that led you to finally put the words on paper?
I started many years ago, but I didn't have a voice. I couldn't find my words. I needed to educate myself. I needed to learn how to speak, and I needed to learn how to write. And that took many years and many attempts and many discards. And then suddenly, finally, one day I decided, my wife said, Nate, you got to start writing your memoir, otherwise they will be gone. And we were in Florida at the time, and I had time on my hands. And I sat down and I wrote it, and I wrote it for the next 2 years, and that was it. But the weight of freedom came to light, and I've had great success with it since. It started out 420 pages. They put it down to 240. Yes. And, being a Holocaust survivor, I must say that I enjoyed life. After the war, my father and I, we made a pact that we're going to live our life into fullest. There was a second chance that we got it, and I learned how to ski and to sail and to do other sports and to everything that I was robbed. I felt that my youth was robbed. And when I entered high school, I was 20 years old and I masqueraded as an 18-year-old sitting in the classroom with 16-year-olds. And I just forgot. I said, I have to concentrate on life. Never mind what happened, I have to concentrate on life.
Well, you have, and you've left it, an important story behind in The Weight of Freedom. I was really struck, reading it, how vivid and detailed your memories are. And you said that once you see something, it stays with you. How has that shaped the way you remember those painful years? And what was it like revisiting them while you were writing it?
It's very difficult. It takes an emotional toll. And people ask me, why am I going back to Poland and revisiting the horrors of the. And I do it as an out of body experience. I have learned to look at my youth as if it was happening to somebody else.
Hmm.
And in my mind's eye, I see a boy in front of me that is standing in front of a gas chamber or in front of the crematoria that's spewing out flames and ashes. And I remember that. And I can't. I don't know why, how, or what. I'm an engineer, so I have a certain visual. I am. I concept. I have visual concept of three dimensions and other spaces. So that all helps me in visualizing what's happening.
You also talked about in writing, the reason for writing the book, that there were so many questions you wanted to ask your dad but never had the chance. Did writing the book help you sort of reconnect with your dad?
My dad was by that time. My father died in 1972, and the book I didn't write in 1994. I'm sorry, 2000 and actually 2010.
10. Okay.
That's when I really started on earnest, and that was many years after. And well, I didn't want to divulge secrets about me to my father. I never knew whether he knew about what happened to me and how I survived and how I handled different situations. And I didn't ask him how he did. So we were, as it were, two solitudes, and we were working together, helping each other, but never asking or challenging our beliefs or our actions. And I never asked him. He was a policeman in the police, in the militia, the Jewish police. I never asked him about it.
Hmm.
I never talked to him. I never asked him where he was or what he did. I just went on the basis that I met other people that knew him during the war and that survived, and they had nothing but the best of opinion of him. So I said, I'm not going to ask him. I'm not going to embarrass him. No, 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 no. Maybe he would lie to me, and I didn't want him to lie to me. So the best way to do it is not to ask the question.
And you share a lot of sort of those things in the book, so it's really powerful of what you had to do yourself to survive. And you can only imagine that other you know kids your age, dads, like your father, all had different experiences, but people didn't talk about it.
Correct. Right. It
Yeah.
was a difficult time, and unless you are in that moment, you cannot judge anybody else what happened and how you will react and what you do to survive. So therefore, that's a holy um grail, as it were, that we're not going to touch.
100%. I mean, 100%. What do you remember most about your childhood before the war?
My mother's love.
Mm.
I She was my idol. She was my. Said my wife just came up.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
You on air live, so just sit down.
Yes. Hi.
Okay,
Hi
so
there.
this is my wife Bernice,
Hi,
who I was
Bernice.
married with for 71 years now, and I am
Incredible.
married with her for 71 years, and we have a wonderful life together. And she just joined me to give me moral support.
I love that. I love that. We all need moral support. We
You
all
must not.
do. Um, oop,
Okay, there we go.
I think you turned off the camera or something.
No, I didn't do anything.
The power just.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I don't see you. I might recommend coming back in. Oh, try that. Nope.
That had heard before.
Why don't you try coming back in?
Okay.
Thanks everybody for being here. So honored that he is here tonight, that Nate is here and sharing this story. I mean, at 98 years old, and that he has been doing this and sharing the pain that he went through during World War II at the hand of the Nazis. I'm so grateful. These stories are so important. I don't know if everybody heard about two Jewish men, I think men, were attacked in London yesterday or today. So it is so important. All right, let's see. There he is. There you are. Perfect. 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 So we were just talking about what you remember from your childhood, and you said your mom. There's also a moment in the book where you're given the photograph of your sister and cousin at the Purim celebration, and you reflect that remembering only the tragedy would be a betrayal of the life that existed before. Can you talk about that and why it's so important to remember not just what was lost, but what was lived? I think that is such a incredibly moving moment in the book.
The whole world does that. They concentrate on the loss of 6 million lives. They do not concentrate on who those 6 million lives were. We forget that there were scientists, there were theologians, there were Torah scholars, there were psychiatrists and poets and writers and doctors of fame and people who have won Nobel Prizes. These people were a part of the pinnacle of society. They were the leading edge. They've made Poland what it was and by contributed to the Polish culture. We were not a separate item. We were part of the Polish culture just as well. The Jews today are part of the American culture, and you can't separate the two. That's how I view myself as a when I was a Pole. I called myself a Pole. I was proud to be a Pole, just like the American Jews are. I'm proud to be Americans. That was my life. My aunts were educated. My mother's family was assimilated. My father's family was ultra orthodox. We lived together in harmony. We had a wonderful life. To not to remember that is to, like Elie Wiesel says, if you don't remember who the people were, you're killing them again.
So such a powerful statement. Throughout everything that you endured, you and your father remained together, which really, for what was going on around you, what did that bond mean to you during those years? I mean,
What is
you
this?
know,
What?
the bond of having your dad.
Yes. Well, I had a very difficult time with my father as growing up because I was rambunctious and I was a street kid, and he didn't like that at all, and so I got into trouble very easily. I could never please him. Whenever I tried to please him, I always failed. So I actually felt that he disliked me, and I had very turbulent coexistence with him before we went into the camp. And then he saved me. He saved at his own danger of his own life. He saved me twice, in going in and going out of Auschwitz. And I realized that he loved me, and that what he wanted to do is wanted to improve me to be a good human being, and that changed it. Now, when we were in camp together, we were like two brothers, not like a brother, son and father relationship. We were working together as a team. And even after the war in Germany, we were, living in one room, we were like brothers. There was no secret between us. Everything was in the open. And then he got married, and then he suddenly climbed up. He had another person to confide in, and he, naturally, you have a different relationship with your wife than you have even with your brother, even or especially a son. So I actually resented that for a while, but I got used to it, and I realized that that's life. And I think that one of the survival mechanisms is not to get stuck in where you are, is to adapt to the new developing conditions and to make the best out of the existence of the present condition that you can, and live without regret the life that you're leading. And this is where we are today. Denise and I were at the cusp of changing our life, maybe going into retirement home or something like that. So we have to adopt. If we don't adopt, we'll be lost. And that's my. If I had to say, if I had to advise other people what to do, is do that. Be flexible. Bend, don't break.
Always educating. At 98, you are still educating, which is incredible. There are moments in the book too where you describe people helping one another, even in the worst conditions. What do you remember about acts of humanity during that time when you got to see acts of humanity?
Well, in the darkest of time, a slight moment of friendship, a slight help is it's amplified 1,000 times. It's unexpected. You can find it in everyday living. Whether you are not pushed or never shoved, or you're not being hit. I threw a piece of bread to my father from one line up to the other, and he missed it. Another prisoner picked it up. You would imagine that he wouldn't give it back, but he did. He gave it to my father. And I have a theory that the suffering does not change your character. Because people say, you become better character, you become a better person if you suffer. I don't believe that. I feel that suffering amplifies your character, doesn't change it. If you're a good person, it amplifies how good you are. The priests and rabbis and people who are have moral fiber to they're shone, and people who had a streak of sadism, violence, became violent and sadistic, and that's what I think, that putting man in terribly unnatural conditions and difficult conditions brings both these things out, the good, and amplifies your character.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that. You also talk about a moment, in the book about the mother and her child. And you later wrote that tragedy was not only the loss of life, but how moral values were distorted. How did you, at a young age, come to understand that over time, what had happened?
Yes, it didn't hit me immediately. I was just horrified, and my parents were horrified. We wouldn't return into the hiding place that we were in because of that event, because of that situation. And as I said in my book, I said that they not only murdered us, but they turned us into murderers just for another 20 minutes of freedom or existence or not being deported, because we did not know that our lives were being threatened at that point. And so being witnessing the death of a child was really terrible. It was a really my first experience of life and death, and I had really difficulty handling it. And I didn't handle it right away. It just went into my subconscious, and it stuck there for many years.
You know, my father was your age. He was born in 1928, this month, actually, last Friday. And he was a survivor. And reading your story, I know some of his story, but I know my dad was separated from his family, and I just see a lot of him in you. And then that story of you all in hiding. My mother was 10 years younger than my father. She was 3 to 8. So she could have been one of those young, that young kid, that people were afraid were going to start crying.
Yeah.
It's
It's terrible what man will do in order to survive. And I think the saving grace is that we have moral courage. That we have courage to be moral. That we do not succumb to the lowest denominator. And that for that, I don't know who to thank, but I thank every day for my existence and for the fact that I have survived as an intact person, that I could form a family, I could love my wife, and I could, bring children to the world, who and in turn brought grandchildren and great grandchildren. How do you evaluate that? How do you thank your lucky stars for what you have, and how wonderful it is that you're here still at the age of 98 and going on, and hopefully go to for my ambition is to go on a march of living till I'm 100.
Oh, that would be amazing. I have to do that. I would like to either do the march or the ride for the living. I know they do the bike ride as well.
Yes.
So I have never been, and my sister and I hope to do one of those one day.
Well,
We
next year
definitely.
I hope to go again. It depends on how well I
In,
am, how if I can walk, if I can talk, when I can open out my mouth and
uh, I
we'll
have no
see.
doubt you will be there. You describe May 2nd, 1945, the day of liberation, in such vivid detail, including the uncertainty of whether it was real. When you think back now, what stands out from that day for you?
That was a very, very, as a matter of fact, I considered it my second birthday. Because there was a transition from one life to another. It was a transition from a life of loss and disease and death to a promise of life. And little did I know at the moment of liberation that 5 days later, I will be sick with typhus fever and almost die from it. But at that moment, I felt that You know, my father and I, we did not want to go on the last March of the March of Death, or Death March, and we decided to
Right.
stay in the camp and take our chance. The commandant could have burned the camp, shot all the inmates, and that would have been the end of it. But I felt that I was going to take a chance. This was the sixth evacuation, and I was not ready to go again. And my father got mad at me because I was at the point of giving up hope, which one of the aspects of survival was to retain your hope and to retain your moral fiber and to retain your desire to live and to overcome what you and and hopefully to be reunited with your family.
God had another plan for you. I mean, he certainly put you through the test during that time, and then to come right out on Liberation Day and have typhus is really a lot. But you fought it all.
Yes, well, you know, talking about typhus, I go to schools, and one of the kids from the school said, he surprised me with the question. He said, "Did you believe in God?" I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't know. I started to reflect, and I said, "Well, if something good happened to me and I got another piece of bread from somewhere, I said, thank you, God." And when I got hit, I said, "What did I do then for that? To deserve that?" But the moment really came when I was sick with typhus fever. For 5 days, I was lying in a coma, and I had very few moments of lucidity. And in those moments, I remember waking up in pain and discomfort, and I was pleading with God. I says, "Why now? Why are you going to take me now? Now that nobody's trying to kill me, why are you going to take me now?" So I definitely believed, and I asked the same question many, many years later to my father. "Did you believe in God?" And he said, "Silly boy, why do you think we survived? We survived because I prayed twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, from memory, and that's why we survived." And he died a pious man.
Wow. I mean, that kind of faith is powerful, incredibly powerful. Not long after the typhus, shortly after, you almost drowned as well.
Yeah.
Which is, and then another incredible story. When you believed a German saved your life, which led you to reflect that, not judging an entire group of people. What did that experience teach you? And it can teach so many who read your book, because I can tell you, my mother never wanted to get into a German car, ever, having survived the war. She couldn't not judge, unfortunately.
Well, if you remember that we lived in Germany for 3 years
Yeah.
after the incident, and I had German friends whose fathers may have been Nazi SS people, or at least collaborators or something or another. And I never felt that they were guilty for their father's sins. And I governed my life according to the thing that I lived in a family where some of my members were religious, some of them were not. Some of them were modern, and some of them were following of the ancient rite. And I lived in a world where Christian boys and girls were my friends. I lived in a compound or an apartment building that we were the only Jewish family. So I never had the idea of we against them.
Mm-hmm.
I always looked at it as a human race, as a human situation, circumstances which led me into difficulties. But I never, and actually, the fact that I learned, my two of my aunts, two of my mother's sisters, were saved by Christian men who married them eventually, and my mother, my aunts, my aunts actually converted to Christianity. And
Right.
I never felt against that. I never felt they were afraid that I would judge them for it. And I said, no, it doesn't matter what religion you are. You're a human being. That's the most important aspect of your life, is to live as a human being. What you believe is immaterial to my relationship with you. I love you the same. It doesn't matter. When I went into business with a Polish Catholic, a Lithuanian Catholic, and an Estonian Protestant. And we formed a firm together, and we supported each other, and we made a wonderful living. The rest of the world, of course, judged us by the fact that, they didn't give my Catholic partner a job because he had a Jewish partner. But, that didn't stop us. We went together, and we were in business together for, till we sold it. I mean, I had many, many relationships with many people. I don't know if it got into the book or if it got cut out, that in my firm that I sold in 2007. And at that time, we had 110 employees. Out of the 110, we had 28 different nationalities and religions in our group.
Oh.
So there was absolutely no discrimination. There was no harassment. There was nobody called anybody else's name. And so this is, I think, if I may say so, it's my conviction that we are a human race, and unless we support each other, and unless we work together, we will hold hands and go down together. And this brings me to today. Today when we're living in a world post October the 7th, I'm living
Mm-hmm.
with anti-Semitism. I'm living my home. My home was invaded by some people tearing down mezuzah from my door of my neighbor, not my door, but some my neighbor, and on one floor up. My synagogue was shut up by some idiots. And this is, I'm living in this world which is so reminiscent of 1933, and not only in Europe but in the United States, when you had Father Laughlin and you had Henry Ford, and you had others who were against against the Jews, for the Nazis, and this is repeating itself. So I'm duty bound to tell the world, beware, look what's happening. It all started with words, and where did it end? And unless you listen to the people who are trying to teach you and tell you that this is a warning, tomorrow, what happened to the Jews, I don't think will happen again. Not as long as we have Israel. And so far, Israel has proven itself to be strong and living up to its, to its enemies. I mean, standing up to its enemies. But it could happen to another nation. It could happen to another group of people that, some stupid idiot starts saying that they don't have a right to live or exist. We have no guarantees for that. So, and they say racism, you have this race, of that race. There's only one race, the human race. And it doesn't matter what color and what shape your eyes are. We are one human race. We can, the science has proven it, that we are the same race. We can intermarry and we can have children with each other. There's no difference. It's not as if we were a different phylum in the kingdom of the wild. We are one race.
We all bleed the same color.
Yes.
We do. You talk about, or when you're doing your talks, you often ask young people, will you be a bystander or an upstander? Why is that question so important to you? And explain it for those who may not know what you mean.
There was 80 million German people when Hitler came to power. The party registered 10 million. 70 million Germans were bystanders. It could not have happened unless the bystander was silent. Silence was acquiescence, was approval. And so by being a bystander, you're being actually a perpetrator. You're not neutral. You are supporting the perpetrator.
Yeah. And when you put it into those numbers of how many were part of the Nazi party and how many were bystanders, that's a powerful number. Who did nothing, who said nothing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you write, there's many moments in the book after the war where you're in Germany and many people claiming they didn't know what was happening.
Yes, well, some of them were bystanders, but there was no admission of guilt. The most, if you remember, my encounter with some German youth or young men who were pilots during the war, and they would say, well, the British bombed Dresden out of existence. But I had to remind them, I didn't know at that time. I didn't know about Coventry, and I didn't know how to answer it. But I remember that they bombed Warsaw out of existence. They absolutely leveled Warsaw at 1939. So I said, you started it. Burnt earth was not something that somebody else started. You started it. When you're being treated the same way as you're treating others, now you cry. You're crying that somebody is committing murder against you. You were the one to start it. You cannot get away with it. We have to defend ourselves. And being in defense, you have to be aggressive in order to defend yourself, because you don't have a second chance. You can't wait till the other guy's gun misfires before you fire.
So true. I'm here having this conversation with you because of upstanders who saved my mother and father. My mother was taken in by a family who risked 11 lives to take in her mother and her, two strangers.
Yes, you see, that's another. I think I talked about that as well. That the righteous among the nations made me retain my humanity, my humaneness, and not to become a misanthrope, because it was easy to abandon humanity and say, they're all bad. The whole humanity is bad. And at one time, as a matter of fact, I had a moment where I was in a synagogue, and I was telling the speaker, at that time was a rabbi, and I said, I'm not going to have any children. And he says, why? He says, because I don't want to have children that will have to suffer what I suffered. And I don't want I don't want to bring more humans into the life that would suffer. And he said, you're giving Hitler a posthumous victory.
Wow.
And so I I really was, that was really a moment of truth for me. And I changed that moment. And I went on to have a family, and a wonderful family at that. And have a wonderful life.
Well, and you arrived in Canada 78 years ago, I believe this year in September. What has Canada meant to you?
Paradise.
Mm.
Paradise on earth. You don't know what it felt like. You come out of a country that everything is in rubble, when you can't get anything. And the stores are empty. There's no merchandise to be purchased. And you come into a country that the stores are overflowing. The store windows are loaded with beautiful materials and food, and all you have to do is have money. But it was there, and so it gives you an impetus to go ahead and be industrious and earn money, so that you should be able to get the things that were displayed, because you know what it feels like not having that ability, that opportunity to do that. So you become very industrious, and I was convinced that the only thing that I needed to do is to get an education. That was
Yeah,
paramount in my.
you were set on finding a way to get your education.
Yes, I observed that the people who had education during the Shoah, during the Holocaust, survived a little bit easier, because they did not lose. People who had money, they lost money, and then they were without the means of support. But people, even in the ghetto, they could make a living somehow by teaching music or teaching lessons or doing something. They did not dependent on material things. They had the skills to go through life. Mind you, when it came to living and being in a camp environment, the opposite was true. The people who were used to hard labor and hardship had a greater chance of survival than the people who were intellectuals. But nevertheless, I felt that I needed to, in order to understand the world and understand what just happened to me, I said, I have to learn. I have to find out what this world is all about. So it was a slow process. There was a painful actually. Sometimes it was actually reflecting on it. I said I had a greatest time of learning. I was like a sponge, absorbing everything that was thrown at me.
Well, we are so lucky you did. Bernice, can I ask you what it's been like watching him, really go around the world and share this story where I'm sure deep down there was so much pain behind this story as well. He does it so beautifully and with such passion.
It's very emotional because I try to put myself in that situation, and I just don't know that I would have survived it. So I'm very proud of what Nate does, and the strength that he has to continue to do it. Yeah, it's not easy being the wife of a survivor.
I can imagine.
Because Nate is very focused on history and what happened and why it happened, transmitting to young people the how they can prevent future disaster. So that really has been our life.
And I mean, do you recall him sharing it with you that first time?
Well, when I was very young when I met Nate, and when he started telling me these stories, I didn't believe him, because I didn't know very much about what happened in Europe. And I really thought he's just trying to impress me. But he told me.
I did.
You did. 70 years, did you say earlier?
71 years.
Yeah. So you did impress.
Yeah. But
Wow.
when I started to read Elie Wiesel and
Hmm.
other writers, I realized this really happened. Yeah.
Wow. Nate, when you look at the world today, what gives you hope?
Being human beings like you that are coming out of their comfort zone, facing the world and tell it what it is like, and other people who are doing podcasts. I don't want to mention names, but there are many who realize how unjust this world is. And we realize, and I tell that to my students and my audience who can listen to me. I said, anti-Semitism had many sources, and it mutated and it changed, and it went every year. Every time the human anti-Semitism rose up, it rose up in a different direction. This time it rose out of the uh, prejudice of the uh, the Revolutionary Guards of Iran, who had proxies of Hamas, Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and others, who are their tentacles that are reaching the world, and they are not only convinced that they want to destroy Israel and the Jews, they want to destroy our way of life. Our way of life does not fit in with their religious beliefs. So I'm not talking about all of Islam. I'm talking about the extremist Islam that feel that our civilization went astray, that our liberties are not justified, that our uh, existence is amoral, and therefore they want to destroy us. And so we have to warn the world, and I think that we see it. And from this world, I don't want to go into the pros and cons of this war between the United States, Iran, and Israel, and I don't want to go there. But it shows that the forces that want to destroy our culture and our way of life are there. And I'm saying to the kids, I said, you have to welcome the people who come from those countries that do not have our liberties, and you have to teach them. You have to explain to them what is involved being a free person. What are the sacrifices that we have to do in order to be civil to each other, to support each other? You have to accept them the way they are without trying to change their religious beliefs and their customs, provided that they accept us, as who we are and the way we want to live. And I call that mutual acceptance. And I said mutual acceptance is our way is our way for the future. And if we live in Canada, multinational, multi-religious, multi-ethnic people, we live all together. On my floor, there's half a dozen people that are of different religions and different nationalities and different ethnicities. And we live together in one beautiful country. And the United States the same way. Canada is maybe a little bit more of a melting pot than the United States. But in the end, in the United States was created by the immigrants. It was created by give us the tired and the persecuted so that you can come and live. I'm paraphrasing
Yeah.
the Statue of Liberty saying, but this is the essence of the Western world. I mean, Christianity underwent through many reforms, and to accept the fact that there are different religions that have the equal right to live in the same country, believe in the same God, only practice in different ways.
Mm.
That's the key. There's only
Practice
one
in different
humanity. There's only
ways.
one world. There's only one God. We may worship him differently, or her, or it. but we're not differently people. We're not different.
Wow. I think you've answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If there was one thing you want people watching tonight to take forward from your story into their own lives, what would that be?
Accept your neighbor and your other man as an equal, and practice mutual acceptance, provided that you do it within the laws of the country and you do not want to destroy our culture, because you came to our culture because it is better than what you thought you came from. Therefore, don't try to destroy it. Cherish it. Help us to go forward together as a humanity and to develop our skills and to develop our contribution to the world as best we could.
That's beautifully said. And I just want to read from your niece, Debbie, says, I love my Aunt Bernice and Nate so much. Thank you. Really, Nate, you know, I'm so honored that you were here to share this with me and the audience, and for what you have been doing for many decades. You know, my parents did not speak up as much. They did. We convinced them to do the Shoah video after Schindler's List, and they did that. But you know, it was painful for them. They didn't talk a lot, and I wish I had asked more questions.
But you were also right in not asking questions, because they were entitled to their privacy and to take with them what they didn't want to share with you. You know, not everybody has the same abilities and same method of dealing with trauma and difficult times. I'm fortunate that I had the capacity to do that, but I do not fault people who could not speak, who did not speak to their children. I do not. They had the privilege and they had the right to be silent.
Wow. That hit me hard. That's powerful. And I'm so glad you did have the strength, because we're lucky. You know, there are some who articulate this the way it needs to be articulated to the world, so they understand. And you have that gift. So thank you again for being here. It is a pleasure.
It was a pleasure meeting you in New York.
Yes, it was a pleasure. I have to text my friend who invited me right now to say thank you again for inviting me to that. So be well. I hope you are at the March of the Living for the next 10 years.
I don't know if my wife would agree with you.
Well, Nate, thank you so much for your courage.
It's hard on her.
I am sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for your courage and sharing your story, and for reminding all of us the responsibility we carry moving forward. Be well.
Thank you.
Wow. As I leave you all, remember that we all have choices to make in life. Speak up, do the hard things, and let's all fight hate for good. I truly believe conversations like this can change the world around us. Feel free to share this episode with your friends and family. And until the next conversation, everybody, please stay safe.